Here's something that I thought worth sharing. Something I found a while back on Pipilika, or the gold-digging ants of Herodotus. The work of Herodotus of Samos is one of the main early literary Western sources we have when attempting to reconstruct ancient history. Among his many collected anecdotes, we find a report of a place in the Indian mountains, and with that is also meant modern East Pakistan and Nepal, where gold is gathered from the mounds of ants. These particular ants, according to Herodotus, are furry, giant, and extremely dangerous. Despite the invaluable work he left for later generations, it is stories like this one that will cause outrage among contemporary scholars, among whom Plutarch. They critique him for the inaccuracies in his reports, calling him a fantast. It appears that the historian based some of his reports on hearsay, with the inevitable consequence of inaccuracy. One could argue that it must have been impossible for the man to investigate every claim he recorded. It is clear that rather than not mention the stories, Herodotus chose to write them down anyway. Cicero was one of the few who spoke out on his behalf. History is filled with inaccuracies, he said. It were sufficient enough when a man didn't tell any lies. He called Herodotus the father of history. The criticisms, however, lasted throughout the Middle Ages. 15th century humanist Juan Luis Vives, who is called the father of psychology to this day, adorned Herodotus with the questionable title of father of lies. He wouldn't get rid of that title anymore so easily. But despite all the slander, the contrast never succeeded in destroying his reputation completely. Eventually, during the Enlightenment of the 18th century, Voltaire was one among a growing number who would honor him, and tides finally began to turn. In order for us to make up our own minds whether this story on the furry ants is true or not, let us firstly take a look at what it was exactly that he wrote and see if his words could be based on anything reasonable at all. So in book number 3, page 200 in book number 3, page 102 to 105, he writes, "Besides these, there are Indians of another tribe who border on the city of Caspatirus and the country of Paktika. These people dwell northwards of all the rest of the Indians and follow nearly the same mode of life as the Bactrians." Now they are talking about the Pashtun people who live mainly in the sub-Himalayan mountain ranges that go around here, like Afghanistan and West Pakistan. They are more warlike than any of the other tribes, and from them the men are sent forth who go to produce the gold. For it is in this part of India that the sandy desert lies. Here in this desert, and I mean the Thar desert probably, more southward, there live amid the sand great ants, in size somewhat less than dogs, but bigger than foxes. The Persian king has a number of them which have been caught by the hunters in the land whereof we are speaking. Those ants make their dwellings underground, and like the Greek ants, which they very much resemble in shape, throw up sand heaps as they burrow. Now the sand which they throw up is full of gold. The Indians, when they go into the desert to collect this sand, take 3 camels and harness them together, a female in the middle and a male on either side. From here on he explains in detail how the camels should be tied and why it is also important to do it in this exact way. He also explains when it's best moment of the day for going there and how the heat compares with that of Greece, and ends up with the remark that the ants are the swiftest thing you can imagine. You can go to the links under the video to read up on that. It would take too long here. Herodotus repeats several times that his sources are Persian. There is no direct reason to assume that he is actively twisting their words. His detailed rendition does not sound like he is writing down a fairy tale. He spices his story up with some fantastic additions, and that's it, in my opinion. In fact, Herodotus' version was copied by others like Strabo, for instance, who did not undergo the same slander for the mistakes he took over, um, or that were later found in their narratives. Long after their time, others who attempted to describe the unknown have, in a similar way, attempted to fill in the gaps in the knowledge to their disposal with what later turned out to be nothing but fantasies. Pliny compares this story of the gold digging ants and the danger they pose for the gold miners to the legends of another mythical guardian of treasure, namely the Griffin. He points to Ctesias of Cnidus, a Doric Asclepian or doctor, who was ordered to write down the history of the Persians, and he says, but also a tribe is reported next to these, towards the north, not far from the actual quarter whence the north wind rises, and from the caves that bear its name, the place called the Gesclithron, key to the earth. These are the Arismapi, whom we have spoken of already. People remarkable for having one eye in the center of the forehead. Many authorities, the most distinguished being Herodotus and Aristeas of Proconnesus, write that these people wage continual war around their metal mines with the Griffins, a kind of a winged wild beast, as commonly reported, that digs gold out of mines, which the creatures guard fiercely while the Arismapi try to take it from them. They are both, Herodotus and Pliny are both referring to the Hyperboreans, living as far north as the Ural Mountains, or beyond the Zungarian Gate into the Altai, where tribes live who often are classified under the big denominator of the Scythians. There are solid theories on the origin of the fabulous Griffins. The archaeological finds of skeletons of the Protoceratops in the Altai Mountains of Kazakhstan, China, and Mongolia can count as solid evidence for the link between the two creatures. Protoceratops was a rather small species of dino, 6 to 7 feet long, not higher than a man. It is quadrupedal, has a long beak and 2 toes and clawed heels. The earliest depictions of the griffin found until now then, however, does not originate from up north, but is dated to the 4th millennium BC and found in Proto-Elamite settlements in Susa, southwest of Iran. From the 3rd millennium on, the griffin becomes a popular symbol throughout the Near East. This is clearly much, much older than the time when the Central Asians or Greeks picked it up during the 1st millennium. In fact, griffins are not so easy to define neither. Many varied appearances have been accepted as representing griffins, including wingless sphinxes, bipedal standing winged lions with human heads, winged humans with avian heads, winged lions, long-necked lion griffins, and lions with avian heads. Within these swarms, there are even more variations, with or without wings or tails or ears or crests, or manes of hair or feather, or yeah. There are bird griffins with eagle or peafowl or falcon heads, as well as varieties of big cat species reflected in their bodies and limbs. Um, so, for the Protoceratops theory to be fitting, one needs to discount all the varieties that are found over the years, which, yeah, that may be a bit of, yeah, I don't know, maybe mere cherry picking now. Or maybe they are cherry picking in order to reach a seemingly conclusive statement. I want to take the opportunity here to make a little correction with a picture I used in the part on Aardvark and the set animal. I used this one here as an example stylized model for, as a possible stylized model, I mean, for the Egyptian deity, but this particular piece has also been called a griffin by some, so I just want to put that straight. And this brings me, yeah, to something else. It brings about the question why so few seem to ask themselves the question whether the Giza sphinxes might have had a bird's head. I don't know. As for Herodotus, in Book 3, he finishes his account of the Aris Mapi and their trouble with the Griffins by saying, "But here too I am incredulous, and cannot persuade myself that there is a race of men born with one eye." So that goes to show that the father of history does have some integrity after all. Okay, guys, I'm gonna chop it up here and keep an eye out for part 2. Should be ready very soon. So thanks for watching.